Medium, developed and published by Bloober Team in 2021, is a third-person psychological horror game that introduces some incredibly unique gameplay mechanics to the genre. Of course, this studio is known for its flair for the dramatic, and the origins of this game are certainly on brand. I actually had the privilege of speaking with one of the members of the development team for this game, and I'm just so grateful he stopped by my stream. Though the game was first released for the Xbox Series S and X in 2021, quite apropos to a major element of the game, there were echoes all the way back in 2012. In fact, the dev I spoke with mentioned he was told to leave cryptic voicemails saying, "Have you heard about Medium? If not, you will." And almost 10 years later, we did hear something, and it proved to be a remarkable horror experience. Set in Krakow, Poland, the Medium centers around Marianne, a woman with spiritual powers, the ability to shepherd restless spirits to the other side, and a classic helping of protagonist-related amnesia. Does this sound familiar? If so, there is help out there. Don't delay, call the protagonist helpline today. And that's not the only cliche we see. Probably the most prevalent would have to be the butterflies and moths we see all over. Both of these insects evoke the concept of metamorphosis, which resonates with the profound change that occurs within Marianne, the onset of her spiritual powers, which seem to have emerged after a fateful brush with death that she just can't keep running from. An uncannily timed phone call on the very day she prepares herself to bury her adopted and much beloved father Jack summons her to the Neva Resort, a place we will learn later on of import that will unlock long dormant memories regarding just who she is and why and how her powers came to be. But as I learned from my conversation with the Bloober Team member, it turns out that Neva Resort is a real place. In fact, many of the locations are real and have historical significance. And that's one of the strengths of the world presented to us in the medium. The writers do an excellent job of interweaving Marianne's horrific past with Poland's own traumatic historical landscape in such relevant and impactful ways, which is really something because usually historical setting merely provides some added context or serves as a backdrop. Never before have I seen actual history take such a dynamic role in a video game. Absolutely stunning. And speaking of stunning, the environments are beautifully realized and exploration of and interaction with them is such a joy. And the cherry on top would have to be the unique mechanism of this game, the simultaneity of two worlds, the duality of the material or real world and the world of the spirit. The person I spoke to at Bloober Team mentioned that the release of this game was marred by performance issues, which I can totally understand. As he said himself, it's not easy rendering two environments at once. And that's just what this game attempts to do. Marianne's powers allow her to keep one foot in the real world while also stepping one foot into the spirit world. Her experience of the world is split, and that's thematically realized for us, the player, by the split screens that we get. It's bananas. With this mechanic, Bloober Team pushes the bounds of what not only horror games, but what all video games can do. I'm so forgiving of the performance issues that haunted this game at its release because the devs tried something. And not just anything, right? They tried something that is so thematically relevant to the game, something that ingeniously captures Marianne's experiences of the world and makes it accessible in real time to us. We don't need narration or journal entries to understand the constant psychological mindfuck Marianne endures because it's right in front of us. And that's not the only unique mechanic. We also have the ways in which the spirit powers can be harnessed to impact the material world, or the way that the environments in both worlds are slightly different and must be navigated as one holistic environment, but also on their own individual terms. Seriously, though it caused problems at release, the significance of Marianne's powers would have been totally lost, or at least dulled by the absence of this spirit reality. But in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it to you to experience this unique gaming mechanic for yourself and move on to some other aspects of the game. And let's talk about the writing. The writers do an excellent job of giving us strong characters with a lot of substance and intrigue. We don't get everything up front. How could we? Our narrator has amnesia. But we get just enough characterization to keep us invested. But heed my warning, withhold your evaluations about who the good guys and bad guys of this story are. The writers do an excellent job of complicating notions of good and evil spectacularly. On top of that, the pacing of what details and clues we uncover regarding Marianne's connection to the Neva Resort is phenomenal. I seriously have a huge amount of respect for writers who get it right. It's a difficult balance to strike in terms of maintaining intrigue without either making things too obvious or too cryptic, both outcomes potentially negatively impacting your audience's interest and ability to follow along. I will say though, When Marianne has lines of dialogue that are meant to serve as hints for what we should do next, sometimes those are a bit too obvious and hand-holdy. Otherwise, she has incredibly insightful and emotive things to say. She can even get a little snarky, which I honestly found cute and very on-brand with her character, and just made her so much more relatable. And my final point about the writing, I am beyond impressed that the writers mete out such seemingly disparate plot points that ultimately coalesce and crystallize at the very end in such a magnificent way. This game is absolutely a fucking masterclass in video game writing, and just excellent writing in any medium. Eh? Eh? And as far as the soundscape goes, this is strong as well. From the composition of the pieces themselves with the consideration of instrumentation to the reproduction of real-world noises. There is just so much thought and care that clearly went into this, and it pays off quite nicely. Especially in the moments where I was stumped and couldn't figure out what to do next, dum-dum that I am, the tense and unnerving music didn't let my anxiety wane, even when my own ineptitude risked throwing off the pacing of the horror experience. Though it's obviously not the star of the show, the soundscape had such a strong showing. The only detriment would probably have to be very few voice acting performances. I think I counted 2 that just came off as funny and overacted, which distracted from the horrific experiences that the devs were trying to convey. But in spite of those weak moments, our primary antagonist was voiced by none other than the amazingly talented Troy Baker. And what a phenomenally bone-chilling performance he delivers. I could feel the desperation, anguish, and malice behind every single line. I'm blown away by how expertly he made such a noxious miasma of emotion come across in every line of dialogue. Hats off to you, sir. Currently, the medium is $49.99 US on Steam. While that's a high price, I think it's worth it. It offers probably the most unique horror experience I've ever come across in a video game, and I've got quite a few horror games under my belt. Is it in-your-face scary? Not really. It's more of a slow burn, but it's unnerving as fuck and such a brilliant example of psychological horror. The Bloober team has made something truly remarkable and groundbreaking with this game, and you're absolutely missing out if you don't give this one a go.